You need to stop trying to convince yourself that you're not nervous. Have you ever had the thoughts like, I don't know why I'm nervous. There's really nothing to be nervous about right now. I shouldn't even be nervous. Do you think those are helpful thoughts? Or do you think those are hurtful thoughts? Maybe even thoughts that are making your nervousness worse. I'm talking to an athlete right now. She and I are working together within one-on-one coaching because she has a big audition coming up. Now, recently, she got to dance in front of the actual coaches who are the coaches of the team that she's auditioning for. And she was telling me about how when she was dancing in front of them, she started to get nervous again. And when she began to get nervous, she was having those exact same thoughts. She was asking herself, why am I nervous right now? And then she was trying to convince herself that there was nothing to be nervous about. This didn't help her at all. In fact, it made her nervousness worse because she kept getting more and more stressed about what they were thinking and how, when she gets nervous, she doesn't perform well. And this is something that we're going to see all the time. When we try to convince ourselves that we're not nervous, that there's nothing to be nervous about, it's only going to make the situation worse. For one, when you try to convince yourself that there's nothing to be nervous about, but then you do feel nervous, what's that telling your brain? It's telling your brain that you're doing something wrong or you're feeling something wrong right now. If you're telling yourself that there's nothing to be nervous about, but then you feel nervous, that's you telling yourself, well, I'm feeling a way that I shouldn't feel right now, so what's wrong with me? Why do I feel this way? But also, nervousness in and of itself is a distraction. And when we focus so much on the fact that we are nervous and then we try to convince ourselves that there's nothing to be nervous about, we're still focusing on the nervousness itself, and that's only making it worse. And there's no way that we're going to be able to convince ourselves that we're not nervous, because the truth is, we're nervous for a reason. We want to do well. The game matters to us. The audition matters to us, right? That dancer that I'm working with, I was talking to her about how it makes complete sense why she's nervous, and it would be weird if she didn't feel nervous. She's put a lot of work in, and she expects herself to do well, and she wants to do well. She wants to make it onto the team. And for yourself, if you get nervous before games, again, that nervousness is completely normal. But there's a big difference between nervousness and anxiety, and a lot of times anxiety forms because we're so caught up in the fact that we're nervous, and then we're trying to think, why am I nervous? I shouldn't be nervous, and then the nervousness itself leads to anxiety because we're thinking about it so much, instead of focusing on what we actually need to focus on in order to play well. So this is where I was talking to her, and I tell all the athletes I work with in one-on-one coaching that we have to accept the way we feel in the moment. Instead of trying to convince ourselves that there's nothing to be nervous about, we shouldn't feel nervous, it's stupid for us to feel this way, we want to just accept, okay, I feel nervous. Because then when we accept that, we free ourselves up, and more specifically, we free up our attention to focus on what we actually need to be focused on. If you're getting ready to start a basketball game, for example, and you're trying to convince yourself that you're not nervous, you're taking your attention away from what you actually need to be focused on at that moment in order to get prepared for the game, right? If you're warming up, focus on your warm-up instead of the fact that you're nervous or not. When the game's getting ready to start, focus on how you can go out there and play well, not how you're trying to convince yourself that you're not nervous. What we want to figure out how to do is to take our attention off of the nervousness itself and put our attention on what we need to do in order to perform our best. And we can do that even if we're feeling nervous, but we can't do that if we're trying to convince ourselves not to feel nervous. So the simple tip that I have for you today, for this episode, is that you want to make sure that you practice a very simple strategy where you first accept the way you feel, then you try to refocus onto something that you can control. Because the more I think about how I shouldn't be nervous or how, it's silly that I'm nervous, the more I'm focusing on the feeling of nervousness, which means it's only going to grow. But remember, we want to focus on what we can actually control to help us play better. So I want to be able to take my attention off of that nervousness and put it on to what I need to be focused on at that moment. Whether that is my attitude, whether it's the effort that I'm going to give, whether it's my game plan, whatever it ends up being at that moment. But I know that it shouldn't be trying to convince myself that I'm not nervous. And that's what acceptance helps us do, because when we accept that, okay, I feel nervous right now. That's fine. I feel nervous. I no longer have to think about the nervousness. I no longer have to try to convince myself through my thinking that I don't need to feel nervous. I'm accepting that it's there, and so now I'm able to actually change what I'm focused on. And the funny thing about all of this is when we change what we're focused on and we do begin to focus more in the present moment on what we can control, that starts to help the nervousness go away. Not because you're trying to make the nervousness go away, but, nervousness and especially anxiety, when it turns into sports performance anxiety, it's really driven by our thinking and attention. And the more we think about what's going to happen, the more we think about how we currently feel, how we worry about, oh, because I feel nervous, I'm not going to play well. The more we think about all that, the more anxious and nervous we become. So once I start to think about something else, my nervousness will go away, but that's not necessarily the end goal here. That's just a byproduct of me changing my attention and changing what I'm thinking about. So you want to just accept, I feel nervous. That's perfectly fine. But now what do I need to focus on? And then you want to start thinking about what you can control, about, helping yourself play well, or simply just what you can control in the moment. But I find it very important for us to stop trying to convince ourselves that we don't feel the way we currently feel, because that's a losing battle and it's a huge distraction before the game. You feel nervous. So what? It's okay to feel nervous. Accept that. Don't try to convince yourself you don't feel nervous. But then when you accept it, take your attention off of it. Put your attention on what you actually need to focus on and what you actually need to do to go out there, to play your best, and most importantly, to just play your hardest no matter how you currently feel. So stop trying to convince yourself you're not nervous and just accept the nervousness you do feel in the moment. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching or the Confident Competitor Academy, I've put links to both of those in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the best of success in all that you do.